The Heat roster has a lot to prove, but which players will capture our attention more than others? We draft the most interesting players to watch this season on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, join more than 17,000 Heat fans and click that subscribe button on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Have a fun show for you today. It's a Friday, so we're doing our weekly draft, but this time we're changing up the rules a little bit. We're talking about the most interesting Heat players for the upcoming season, but rather than just do a straight draft and go through the roster that way, we're going to do it. We're going to separate the roster into two teams and then pin them against each other. So we will have the projected starters versus the bench, and we're going to nominate the most interesting player, the least interesting player, and the most interesting B storyline or kind of side quest from each group. And then we're going to have them face off in the final segment so that we can crown the most and least interesting players on the Heat for the upcoming season. But before we jump in, David, we do need to agree on what we are considering the projected starting lineup. What do you have?
I think it's the same lineup that we've talked about ever since the acquisition of Norm Powell. We both settled in on the idea that he's probably going to be a starter, and I think we're pretty sure of that. So it's Tyler Hero, Norman Powell in the backcourt, alongside Andrew Wiggins, Bam Adebayo, and Kel'el Ware at center.
All right, so we're going to start there. We've got these five players to choose from. We'll start with most interesting, then get to least interesting, and then go to our most interesting B storyline / side quest. But if I could just nominate three people for most interesting, and tell me where you kind of want to go with this. But to me, I think Bam is really interesting. I think Kel'el Ware is very interesting. And I think Powell is very interesting just because he's the new guy, right? And I think Heat fans are just going to be naturally gravitating to watching Powell and what he can do for this Heat team. But of those three, who do you think is the most interesting, or who do you want to talk about a little bit more?
The newest player on this roster, but understanding what he's going to bring to the table, understanding how he meshes in the starting lineup, how he blends in with established players like Tyler Hero and Bam on this roster. We've seen what he can do before. He's been from team to team. This is his fourth team over the course of his NBA career. So it's not like he's not used to that experience of having to figure out his role here. But coming off a career year, how much of that was the benefit of playing alongside James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, etc., or is that something that he can replicate here in Miami? Can he continue to shoot at such a high level from three-point range? Can he create his shot? Can he continue developing as an underrated playmaker? There is a lot of questions about Powell and whether or not he can continue to be the player that he thinks he is in terms of his contract extension. That's going to be a looming issue throughout the season. And so when you look at all the other starters, I think we kind of know exactly what we're getting from the rest of that starting lineup. They're going to change. They're going to adapt. It's going to be a little bit different in some regards. But Powell is certainly the X factor here to me, in that we just haven't seen him play in a Heat uniform alongside the rest of that starting lineup. And that's why I think he's the most interesting player to watch out for.
I hear your case. I think you're taking the easy way out. I think it's Bam. think it's Bam, and I'm going to make my case. So we're working on our top 100 rankings for the as the Locked On Podcast Network, and I was looking through it today, and I've seen some other rankings that have Bam in the 30s. Some people have him in the 40s. I did my rankings, David. I had him right outside my top 20, and I think he's a very interesting player in the NBA because it feels like he can kind of fluctuate game to game. And this is not even a perception thing. This is literally how he plays. Some nights he plays like the 20th best player in the league, and some nights he's just a little too invisible on offense for your liking. And with Jimmy Butler gone, this is squarely Bam Adebayo's team. He might not be the best player every single night. Tyler Hero might pop off. Norm Powell might pop off and be the best player on any given night for Miami. But it is Bam's team. And how he responds to that, without the smoke and the drama of all the Jimmy Butler stuff happening, how he responds to that after getting an offseason and how he leads this team, to me, is there's just more layers to that than how does Norm Powell play with Tyler Hero, which is interesting. Or even with Kel'el Ware, who I think should be in this conversation. Like, okay, what does he look like in his second? Is he just better? Is he the same? Is he worse? Is there a sophomore slump? Like, that to me is it is interesting. But to me, the Bam story is so interesting because it feels like it matters more than any of these other things.
I totally disagree with that. I don't even consider Bam to be all that interesting in that sense that I know exactly what we're going to get from Bam, and it's probably going to be underwhelming in some cases. And
really,
it's going to
you think based off of last season was a down year? Do you, when you say you know exactly what it's going to be from Bam, do you think it'll be more like last season or the seasons before?
No, I expect him to bounce back. I expect him to be a
Okay.
little more productive than he was last year. I just don't know ascribing my own level of expectation to a player like that, because I think Bam is very unique in how he impacts the game on so many different ways. And I know that a lot of Heat fans probably are pulling their hair out just even hearing this description, because they just want him to be a 25 point per game scorer. They want him to play at such a high level as a productive offensive player, and that kind of overlooks all the other things that he does well.
I mean, the way
because
that
I don't care about that anymore.
I guess.
I don't care about that anymore.
So if
to me, I'm looking at projections. Yeah, that's not my projection from him. So to me, Powell, again, he is the new player here, but he's the one who can really lift this team to a much higher level. Like, I don't expect Bam to be that 25 point per game scorer. He's going to have nights where he can't score that way, but I know what I'm going to get from him. It's going to be all NBA defense. He's going to impact the game. He's going to make a lot of plays. He's going to set good screens. He's going to rebound the hell out of everything. He's going to lead the team emotionally, and he's going to be there every night and play his ass off. We've seen that for a number of years already. That's not
anybody else that you'd want to nominate outside of Powell, since you're dismissing Bam?
Kel'el Ware. I think.
Do you think before we even get into it, do you think Kel'el Ware even would you consider him more interesting than Powell? Does he even have a real case for you?
Yes, because I think, again, his potential is such that if he plays, and I don't know that he will, and I really don't think he will this season, not to that point. If we get the best version of Ware in his second season, a guy who is flirting with 20 and 10, with 2-3 blocks per game, somewhere around there, then that's an all-star candidate and somebody who raises this team up to a level that I don't think anybody projects them to be. I think those are unrealistic expectations for a second-year player that's still kind of finding his footing.
But,
and still
but
has
watching that growth
tools.
is interesting.
Yes.
Right? Watching him matriculate to that point of what could potentially be the best version of him. To me, I have Bam and Ware as the two most interesting guys. I thought Powell was also in the running. So maybe we split the difference and we just go with Kel'el Ware as the most interesting player. You're talking me into Powell, though. If you feel that strongly about Powell, we'll go with him. Okay, so we're going to go Powell. Least interesting player. We got to go quickly here because I want to finish
Least interesting player in the starting lineup, to me, it's Bam. I don't think you're going to feel that way, so I'm going to have to argue Andrew Wiggins then, because, again, the Wiggins experiment has been fully conducted and played out right now. He's going to have good games. He's going to have some games where he's totally invisible. I just don't see he's going to be that impactful. Tyler, at the very least, still has another level to reach.
I'm going Tyler Hero.
Okay, as the least interesting player, you think he's done? He's plateaued,
No, not necessarily that he plateaued. I think he'll be a little bit better, but it does not necessarily make him interesting. And I mean this as a compliment for Tyler. Like, for the first time, it's not interesting. For the first time, he's not in the middle of trade rumors. For the first time, it's not, is he a sixth man? Is he a starter? Like, no, he's an all-star player, clear starter, one of the best three-point shooters in the league. We know what he is as a scorer. I kind of just think we know who Tyler Hero is. And maybe he gets a little bit better of a version of that. But there are no more questions about Tyler Hero. I find him extremely uninteresting. And I mean that in the highest complimentary way possible. With Wiggins, there is interest in terms of how he fits coming into his second year. I think that is an interesting thing. So I'm going to go Tyler Hero, and I feel really strongly about it.
See, that's the argument I'd use against Bam, is that he's the uninteresting player to me. Like, I think Tyler still has another level to reach. I think that big question about Tyler, if I had to have one, is he going to be as good as he was last year? Because I think that's a huge question. I think a lot of fans not just of the Heat, but around the league in general, might be wondering whether or not that was just a bit of a mirage that within the chaos of
But
the
he's
Jimmy
not going to be
Butler
a
situation.
different kind of player. He may or may not make the All-Star team. He will be a fringe All-Star player. He's going to be in that mix. Like that to me is interesting. Just like, okay, does he produce as much? Is that interesting to me? Not really.
I don't know.
He's going to be a dramatically different kind of player all of a sudden.
Watching him carry the team offensively last year, yeah, that was kind of interesting. And seeing whether or not he can do it again to be equally interesting. Watching the guy that has been inconsistent throughout his career and wondering, is tonight going to be a 10-point night or a 30-point night, or is it going to be somewhere in between? Not so interesting.
See, that's to me the definition of interesting. Knowing whether or not some guy's going to score 10 or 30, that's interesting.
No,
that's a roller coaster.
I hate that's a roller coaster. Except the roller coaster is filled with puke. I don't know. It's no.
Sometimes
no thanks. I'd rather at least maybe that's the.
I had Bam as my most interesting guy, so I can't settle on him being the least interesting
Our definition
guy.
of interesting, considering how often we see eye to eye here, our definition of interesting and uninteresting. Very varied in this episode.
Well, we got to split the difference then on this. So give me 2 nominations for least interesting. One of them can't be Bam. You got to give me a break on that. I had Bam as my most interesting. Then it's Wiggs. Wiggins is not interesting.
What's he gonna do? He's gonna be really okay on defense.
All right, fine. We'll give you Andrew Wiggins. We'll give you Andrew
20-something games. Yeah, okay.
B storyline. I have something. We got to do this really quick, like 60 seconds. A couple of options here. What's Spo's first change to the starting lineup? This guy has not stuck with a starting 5 in basically forever. 2022, he had Lowry, Duncan, Butler, Tucker, and Adebayo for basically the entire regular season. And then in the playoffs, swapped out Strus for Duncan Robinson. So even then, he didn't really stick with it. That, to me, is the most interesting B storyline for the starting lineup, sort of side quest. So unless there's something else you have on your mind, we can move on.
No, I think that's fair.
Up next, we're going to take a look at the bench, and I thought this was going to be really easy, David, in the starting lineup. We have dramatic differences already. This is going to be a fight till the end. We'll keep going after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize, you know what? I kind of want to be in the stands. Well, that's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you'll be able to splurge on food, drinks, merchandise, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes that possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lower price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for exciting upcoming Major League Baseball game. Right now, I know a lot of people looking forward to the Marlins taking on the New York Yankees. That's a huge series down here in South Florida. If you're looking to get tickets, Game Time is the way to go. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply, but create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll be right back.
All right, let's move to the bench. Most interesting players coming off the bench. David, do you want to nominate some names before we jump into some of the reasons?
I think I've got 2 players in particular that really stand out to me. One that's been on the roster for a while, one that is newly added. I've got Nikola Jovic and Kasparas Jakusjonas. Both of them still untapped potential, and that's why they, to me, are the most interesting players coming off the bench.
You have Jakusjonas and Nikola Jovic. I had both of them on my nominations, and then I kind of wanted to say Davion Mitchell just because I love watching him, but I don't know that he's as interesting.
He's
as
up there
for
players.
Me. And then I also have Jaime Jaquez Jr. coming off of the sophomore slump. I think he's a name worth considering as well.
I agree.
I think it's got to be Jovic, if only because we just did like 2 episodes on him within the last week and a half, and I think it just feels like we think he is the most interesting player, and he's also, dare I say, the most talented player, maybe the most untapped, maybe the way to phrase it is the most untapped potential of this group.
Yes.
And if he's somebody that reaches that potential and it just feels like we're waiting on it, and he's going into his 4th year now, if it's going to happen, it happens now. This is when it happens for Nico. And if it all comes together for him this season, that is something that very much moves the needle for Miami. Whereas with Yakachonis, okay, cool. He might play. He's a rookie. He's probably not going to make that much of a positive impact. Rookies very rarely do. I kind of think we know what to expect from Davion Mitchell, although I love watching him play. We kind of get the idea. And then with Jaime, it's a little bit similar. I think we just all expect him to be better than the sophomore slump. But I still think it's sort of like, okay, is he at that point where it's all going to come together? I don't know. But for Nico, it feels like we're at that point.
Yeah, and we've talked about him, as you said, recently, and seeing the feedback from our listeners and viewers, they're kind of out on Nico, which is disappointing because it's not like it was anything in his control. You can make the argument that he wasn't getting the kind of playing time that maybe he deserved, but I think that was mostly his own fault. Like maybe he didn't go to that well right away, but he was a young rookie, not physically ready for the challenges of the NBA, and his rookie season was just one where they had, higher aspirations, and they couldn't really count on Nico to be a kind of regular rotation player. He was given that opportunity 2nd and 3rd year, and either injury or honestly just failure to perform kept him from developing into a higher role. But that hasn't changed the potential. The versatility is still there, and I mean, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a legit, almost 7-footer that's continuing to develop physically, has put on some muscle, has ball handling skills, can shoot from the perimeter, has improved the defender and as a rebounder and as a defender. And that's a 5-tool player. That's exactly what you're looking for.
And the crazy thing is, we've seen the flashes. There's been games where he just puts it all together and the Heat win. And then there are games where he's just invisible and you don't even notice him out there. So it's about kind of putting it all together and being more consistent. Least interesting bench player. This to me is easy. I'm nominating one player here. Kashad Johnson. Sorry, dude. I don't think you're going to play very much. I think that's it. I like Kashad. I don't mean to pick on him, but I just don't find him very interesting right now.
We're believers. We think that there's going to be an opportunity for him.
To do with that.
He's an NBA level player, but for him to carve out minutes when he has yet to develop something that he can do at an elite level, there's athleticism there. And as much as that might get a chance to pop somewhere else, it's just not even in that sense is he elite as an athlete to the point where he needs playing time in order to showcase that. So it's going to be a continued work in progress until he develops as either a shooter or a defender.
He's in the pipeline, but for our purposes, not interesting. Not going to be interesting to watch him just sit on the bench. B storyline. I'm going to nominate who's the backup center on this team. I think that's sort of interesting. Although there's not very many options, so maybe it's not all that interesting. Will Yakachonis play? Just monitoring his minutes. It'll be frustrating. It'll be a thing that Heat fans complain about with us for the entire regular season, probably, but it'll be interesting to watch. And then there's those are just sort of my honorable mentions. There's really 2 storylines that I think actually could win this. What happens with Terry Rozier? And I mean in any sense. Does he play? Does he not play? Does he get traded? Does he finish the season and just come off Miami's books as an expired? There's a ton of things that can happen with Terry Rozier, which is what makes it interesting. But I also think sneakily interesting, can Pelle Larsson beat out a lot of these guys from minutes? I think that's sneaky interesting here. Because I bet if we were to start playing Heat games right now, Pelle Larsson would be part of the rotation in some way, shape, or form. And my question is, whose minutes is he taking? You know what I mean? And I think that is pretty interesting. But I don't know that it's more interesting than the big what happens with Terry Rozier question.
No, that is my biggest question. It's just the salary and the fact that he's taking up so much of it. And we're also talking amongst the bench players there, your most proven player. In that sense, like nobody's expecting Terry to be what he was in Charlotte. Nobody's even expecting to be what he's been for most of his career. We all know he's been somewhat inefficient and erratic. That's totally fine. It's just that the drop-off was so sharp in comparison to even what we had seen perform him and his performances over the course of his career. And so what happens next to me is a huge question, and whether or not that might be good enough for him to even earn playing time. Because we're talking about Larson, we're talking about Jaime Jaquez, we're talking about Haywood Highsmith, all these guys is sort of on the fringes of the rotation, and Terry might outplay them all because we've at least seen that version of him in the past. I don't know that that's realistic. I don't know that it's possible. I don't know what's going to happen with Rozier. And so to me, that's the biggest, most interesting storyline is, are we going to get a version of Rozier that's even close to playable or even close to what he was before? Or are we going to get the same player that we saw last year? If that's the case, he's out of the rotation and he loses all interest whatsoever. But if he's closer to that, if he's closer to that other
he
point,
might be a trade piece in February for somebody that's
good
trying
luck with
to
all that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you're just trying to say, hey, we got to get off some long-term money, we'll just take Rozier's salary to sit on our bench for 2 months. That's a thing. But he might not even be in the league, depending on how this probe goes with the gambling probe. So that's another whole part of this too. I think it's clearly the winning B storyline there among the bench group. Coming up next, who's the most interesting player on the Heat next season? Who is the least interesting? The starters and the bench go head-to-head after this. All right, it's time for the final round of our most interesting, least interesting draft here. Most interesting, we're going to pin the starter versus the bench player. Kel'el Ware versus Nikola Jovic. What do you think?
It's got to be Khalil. It has to be.
All right, make the case for Khalil, and then I'll make the case for Nico, and then we'll try to come to a conclusion.
To me, again, you're depending on him more. Like if I'd be disappointed on a personal level just because I like Nico and I understand that there are things beyond his control, injury, etc., that might preclude him from becoming the player that we expect him to be. But for Ware, the expectations are so much higher. Like there are enough people around the league that there's a buzz about him being a significant swing player in terms of how Miami performs this season. Like if we get, again, we're not expecting it, but if he reaches close to the potential that we expect him to have this season, then we're talking about a team that could, in theory, contend to be a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference. If he becomes that consistent defense and offensive presence as a second-year player, that might be unrealistic. It might be unfair to put the weight of that kind of high expectation on him. But that's what happens when you get drafted, and that's what you hope for in terms of what he'll reach. Now, even if he's just a 15-10 guy, as long as he's consistent and continues to take strides defensively and as a scorer, I'm happy with that, and I think he's still worth monitoring and watching regularly. So to me, I think it's Ware because he's going to be the projected starter and because I think his ceiling is higher than even Nico's.
So if I can make the case for Nikola Jovic without giving away my actual opinion on this, if I can make the case for Nico, he's going into a contract year, more likely than not, right? He will be extension eligible. No clear indication whether or not he's going to sign that extension. I don't think he's going to, although I have done very little reporting on this. That's more of just a gut feel. So let's assume that this is a contract year. That's interesting. The fact that we've seen the flashes from him, but it's just been on and off with him because of a lot of injury concerns and things like that. Can he put it together? Can he stay healthy? And can he even maybe challenge Kel'el for that starting spot, right? There is a world where Nico is just so freaking good that Eric Spoelstra just says, I'm putting Bam at the 5. Sorry, buddy. And Nico's going to be playing alongside him. Because we know how that looks and we know how that works, and we're going to be able to switch everything defensively, and that's what we're going to be able to do. That said, I do think it's Kel'el. And since you're feeling that way, I think I think it's Kel'el for a lot of reasons. But I'll go back to something that I've said about this team a lot. They used to pretend to be versatile. Kel'el Ware gives them real versatility. He's a lob threat in the way that nobody else on this roster is. He's a shot blocker, a 7-foot fly swatter, the way that nobody else on this roster is. And I even think just his own sort of personal demons, right? With the questions about the motor and all these things, the on and off kind of nature of his game. What we just saw in a small sample size in Las Vegas, that in and of itself is interesting. There are some nights where he looks he could look downright dominant and post 15 and 15, and then there's other nights as a rookie where it was like 10 points, 2 rebounds, and you're like, what the heck's going on there? Why is a 7-footer only grabbing 2 rebounds in an entire game? So I think that there's a lot of stuff that's interesting there. But then if we want to just really dumb it down, David, who has the most upside out of all the young guys on the roster? It's still Kel'el Ware. It's still Kel'el Ware. And if he starts to reach that upside, it has the potential to transform the way Miami's roster looks. So congratulations to Kel'el Ware. You are the most interesting player on the Miami Heat this upcoming season. Let's go to least interesting player. We've got Wiggins versus Kashad Johnson. Make your case for either one of them.
Oh, I think it would have to be Kashad then, just because, again, low expectations.
Play. Yeah,
low expectations, not going to play much. No chance to showcase what kind of a player he is. So, I mean, we might see him spend some time in Sioux Falls, I guess. I don't even know. Like, I think he's going to need some more seasoning. Yeah, so I don't even know that you're going to see him out on the floor as much. And I'd love for him to pop, and maybe this is an opportunity here, but I think it's going to require a roster shakeup of some kind, even for him to get any kind of playing time whatsoever.
A roster shakeup of something. It'd be like a complete roster shakedown. Just all the players are gone. Somebody robbed the Heat roster, and it's just Kashad left. I feel like I'm picking on him. I'm really not. He's not going to play, and that's okay. That's not really the point. Some players, the point isn't to play in any given season. B-star, yes, the winner is Kashad Johnson. Congrats to Kashad Johnson. You are the least interesting Miami Heat player. B storyline winner, we've got how long will Spo go with this starting 5, and when will he shake it up, and what happens, versus what in the world happens with Terry Rozier. I kind of feel like I want to make the case for Spo's starting lineup, but it might be only because we've talked so much about Terry Rozier already.
Yeah, I know it's kind of easy to just go to Rozier, but that is a huge X factor for me. Whereas the starting lineup, I don't know. How many times is he going to change it over the course of the year due to choices that he's going to make, or because of injury, or a combination? I mean, I'm fully expecting this team to reach a 30-something different lineup, different starting lineup over the course of the season, just as they have almost every year. That's just the nature of who this team is. So, yeah, me too. I hope that they're not that team. It just kind of seems like they would. First change likely to happen to me. That might be the most interesting question. If they're going to change the starting lineup, what's the first change that you projected to make? Because I have my idea already.
Well, give it to me then.
I think it's changing the backcourt and starting Davion Mitchell in place of either Tyler or Norm.
I kind of agree with you, but I think it's moving Davion into the starting lineup and maybe taking Wiggins out.
Ooh.
And going a little bit smaller with Davion, Tyler, Norm alongside Bam and Kel'el.
Ooh, that's bold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter. I mean, you're tanking either one of their value, either Norm's value or Wiggins' value. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily tanking the value, and I don't think Spo very much cares about that stuff either, right? It's just going to be, hey, I think we need a real ball handler out there to alleviate Norm and alleviate Tyler. I do think that Eric Spoelstra envisions a team where Tyler Hero and Norm Powell are working together alongside Bam as a dribble handoff guy and those kind of triggers. And even Wiggins running he's going to run offense, right? He's going to run high pick and roll the way that Wiggins always has and get into
post
those
him
spots.
Up like they did last year, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So all that stuff will be there. And I think Spo is envisioning a world where they don't have a nominal point guard, a guy who just runs the offense, but they kind of do it as a committee. I don't know that that's going to work. Maybe that's a theme that we can explore, an idea we can explore in a separate podcast. But if he does, I do agree with you. If he does make a change, it'll be, okay, we just need to kind of have a point guard in there to at least bring the ball up, set the table, and get guys into the spots that they want to get into. So it is interesting to me when Spo eventually makes that first lineup change. If he eventually does make that, he might not. It might work. And no, not considering injuries. Like, that doesn't count. Who cares? It has to be Terry Rozier just because there's a federal investigation going on, and that is endless. That wins. That just wins. I'm sorry. If the FBI is looking into you or whatever's looking into you, you win. Most interesting.
Yeah, not for all the good reasons though. It's just a bit more notoriety than fame at this point. But either way, yeah. Look, there's a
Congrats
lot
to Tara
there.
Zier.
I guess the very dubious honor of being the most interesting storyline for a variety of reasons. Are you going to suck even worse? Are you going to go to jail? What happens? Stay tuned. It's like a really bad soap opera. Yeah, exactly.
It's fascinating. Daytime soap opera. All right. Again, just to recap it, Kel'el Ware, you are the winner of the most interesting player on the Heat this season. Least interesting, congratulations to Kashad Johnson. Most interesting B storyline / side quest goes to Tara Zier and all the accoutrements that go along with that. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. It is a great show. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to Locked On Heat, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.